Hello, friends and family. You guys didn't know that I was a songbird, did you? It's because I'm not, so don't write home about that. Today is day 11. We are making Scrappy pouches. This is not a video where I give you specific instructions to make the... Well, okay, so as I'm making the video, I explain to you how the measurements that I use, but throughout the video, I'm explaining to you how you can make any size pouch that you want. You can choose your own box bottom, you can choose your own width, your height, all of that. So in this pattern, or in this video, I make my panel 9.25 inches wide by 8 inches tall, and then I add this top and bottom section here. And you can make your Scrappy panel however wide or tall that you want. And then you can add your top section and your bottom section. They can also be however tall that you want. All of these measurements, shifting things around, is going to change the proportions of this bag. So this is kind of like a craft shaman video situation, but the whole point of it is to show you that we are going to get into our scrap bins and make a fun Scrappy pouch. So follow along. If you make your own Scrappy pouch, please be sure to post it in the Facebook group so that we can all see. I'm really, really loving all of the posts. It's been so fun to watch everybody go with it. And yeah, I hope that you enjoy my weird pouch. I feel like it's a weird pouch because it's really tall and kind of narrow, but it works great for like my full-size toiletries. They fit in there perfectly. So I think that this is going to be a great travel bag, of course. I feel like all of the bags and pouches that I make end up being travel bags because I'm always traveling. But this could also be a fantastic size for like going to expos and things like that and needing to carry your scissors and your hole punch and all of the big tools that we have. A tall, narrow pouch is fantastic for that. So again, keep all of that in mind. You can change any of the dimensions that you want throughout the video and just follow along and make your own personal size. And yeah, happy sewing. I'll see you at the end of the video for our second to last check-in. I had another idea for the bag after I did my intro, and that is if you lined it with Insole Bright in between the lining and the exterior, then it will be a temperature control bag. And because it is tall and narrow, this would be perfect for carrying like your water bottle or soda cans or whatever that you need to keep cold. Could be a really neat little lunchbox. And then I also wanted to point out that I see all y'all new patrons. I really appreciate you guys joining over there on that platform. The support really means a lot, and I am just very thankful that you guys have migrated over there. If you're interested, it is a subscription-based membership program, and you get first access and behind the scenes and things like that. All of the videos that are on Patreon eventually make their way over here to YouTube, but they're ad-free and early over there. And my patrons help me decide on notions or patterns and things like that. They help me decide on all the content that I'm putting out. And yeah, I just really, really look to my patrons for any kind of ideas that I need to bounce off of people. I always go to them. So all that to say, I see y'all joining. I really appreciate it. And welcome to the crew. Now back to the project. For this project, we are going to let our scraps lead the project. So I dug through my bin and I found, as you can see, this array of colors, and then I figured out what height would work the best for them. And mine just so happens to be 8 inches tall. And then I cut them all at varying widths to add some just fun and variation into the pattern or into the bag. And what I've done is I just kind of laid them out to where they have a similar size width-wise. So you can take your pieces and just kind of swap them around, figure out exactly how you want it to look, and we'll start from there. So this looks like a pretty good, almost perfect match on the width. So now I know that I can keep it like this, or I can continue moving everything around. It's totally up to you. Again, don't be too precious with this. We are just letting the project tell us how it wants to be. So once you figure out your layout for your scraps, what you're going to do is make piles. So I know starting from the left, I'm going to have the black and then the seafoam, light purple. But actually, I kind of want to incorporate one of these into this panel. So I need to find a piece that's almost the same size, which it would be that one. So in order to make this fit and have them be the same width, I need to cut this piece to be the same width as this piece here. So I need to cut a 1/4 inch off of this guy. And then now what I should be left with is something, or the size should be a bit more similar. But so you can just play around with your layout and just kind of see what it is that you're drawn to and what you like. Another thing I'm paying attention to is my end pieces. I like them to be different colors, just so that way the front of the bag looks totally different than the back of the bag. So, yep, just keep moving them around. Figure out exactly how you like it. Oh, I kind of dig that. Okay, I think I'm going to go with that. And I think what I might need to do is trim off a little bit over here. But I'm just going to sew these together and then I'll square them up after I'm done. But so you're going to make your stacks here and keep them in order so that way you know exactly how to sew them. And then take your stacks over to the machine and we'll start stitching them together. For this project, I have a size 18 needle and I'm using Saya Swag Celestia Tex 45 thread. I have the same thread as my upper in my bobbin as well. I've been getting a lot of questions about that and I always match my thread so that way there isn't a tension war. So what I'm going to do is I take the first one off the top and I'm going to lay the second one on it right side down. And then now I'm just going to stitch at a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way down. And then you have the opportunity here to choose, do you want to butterfly your seam open so that you have 2 flat seams along the back, or are you going to just stitch it to one side? And I tend to just stitch to one side, so I'm going to do that. I know that the black was my first on the left-hand side of my panel, so I'm going to put all of my seams toward the right, and now I'm going to top stitch this down and into place. And then we're just going to continue that process for every piece until we run out. Here are my completed pieced panels, and as you can see, I have about 3/4 of an inch gap, and so I have 2 options. I can either trim down this larger panel, or I can add one more piece to this one to make it the same width. And because I already lost so much because of all of the seam allowances, I'm going to add a piece over on this side just to stretch it back out. So I went ahead and cut one more scrap piece. I'm going to pop back to my machine and I'm going to stitch this down and I will be right back. That is much better size-wise. Now this one is slightly larger, but in the next step, we're going to square these out so that they're the same exact size, so I can trim this down once I get that figured out. But in order to get my end size, I'm gonna start working with the smaller one, get all of these edges straight, and then I'll take these measurements and do that on this panel as well. So as you can see, my lines shifted ever so slightly downward as I was sewing. So I need to trim that up. And so I'm just going to, just like with a quilt, you want to square it off. The only thing that you need to pay attention to is you might nick some of your stitches down here. So it's just, you know, just something to be aware of. So I'm going to take it down to the lowest point, or the highest point, to create my cut line here. Okay, so I have this one squared up. It looks pretty straight on these edges, so I just had to chop the tops, the uneven top and bottom. And so now I can use this one as my guide. And so still, it's pretty darn close, but I'm going to take my measurements of my width. So I'm right at, let's do it on an even number. I'm right at 9.25 by 7 7/8. So that's what I'm going to mirror over here. And if it's not perfect, that's okay, because these projects have a way of being pretty forgiving. All right, how wide did I say it was? 9.25. Okay, so I'm just gonna nick off this little edge right over here. And now we have our 2 panels ready to go. Now that I have my panels cut to the size that I want, I am going to add a small top section and a larger bottom section, because whenever we add the zipper, if we try to add it directly to this piece, folding all of these folds down in a tight 1/4 inch seam is going to be really challenging. So we're going to make our own lives easier and add a strip on top along with the strip on bottom, which the strip on bottom will then get boxed to create the bottom edge. So now that I have this figured out, I can cut those 2 pieces. Drizzy, you're not being helpful. So I'm just going to remind myself of this measurement here. So we're right at 9 1/4. Make sure you get a cat to help. Okay, so 9 1/4, and I'm going to cut mine by 1.75. Oh. Keep your little feet over there, girlfriend. Okay, so now these are the pieces that are going to go along the top. And then for the bottom, I'm going to cut the same 9.25 width by 3 inches. So I'm just going to cut out a whole, I'm going to cut them both out at the same time. So 9.25 by 6 inches, and then I'll cut this in half. Okay, you're being violent, little kitty. All right, so now we have our top and bottom sections. So I'm just going to clip this into place on both panels along the top and the bottom. Oh, helps to clip both. Once these are clipped into place, I'm going to go to the machine and stitch them down just the same way that we attached all of the pieces before. So I'm going to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I'm going to flip it and top stitch it on all 4. So now I have my 2 panels complete and ready to go to add the zipper and the lining and the tag and all of that. But I had to get to this point before I knew what size my lining was going to be, because as you can tell, this is a real choose your own adventure situation. So now that these are all completed, I went ahead, I picked out a liner, and I'm feeling a little lazy, so I went with a fabric that I did not have to interface. But if you were going to be using cotton for your lining, I would definitely suggest interfacing if you're into a structured bag. I know a lot of people like softer sided bags, so you know, you choose what you want for that. But given that there are all these seams on here, this is going to be a decently structured area. So I'm not super concerned with using interfacing on this lining. And so this is water resistant cotton, I want to say. I know it's definitely from Mormino. This is one of her latest lines. I just love it so much. And I think that it complements the colors, but instead of having black, it has white, which I think is nice, especially for the inside of this bag. So I went ahead and I cut 2. And what I like to do for all of my bags is I taper the lining so that they don't get all jumbly on the inside once the bag is done. So I'm going to lay them right sides together, and I'm just going to taper in about 3/4 of an inch. I'm angling, starting my ruler point up here at the top right, and I'm angling in toward the bottom. And as you can see, I'm not measuring it, but I just know, because I can tell just by looking at it, that that's about 3/4 of an inch. And there we go. So I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And then also, I cut these the same height as these panels, so I want to go ahead and nick some of this off the bottom as well, so that way it's not yeah, just trust me. Take off like 1/4 of an inch along the bottom. And so now that I know my width, I went ahead, I cut out a zipper. Now I'm going to pull my zipper all the way to the edge of my panels. If you want to, you can add your zipper pull and then finish off the edges of your zipper. You just want to make sure, if you do that, if you finish off the edges of your zipper, you want to make it so that your zipper tape ends about 3/4 of an inch or a little more from the inside or from this outside edge here. So that way you get a nice crisp turn whenever we turn the bag out. But I kind of dig the way that the corners look beveled. I can show you actually. It's like on this guy here, how the corners don't flip all the way out. I kind of like that look, so that's the look that I'm going for. And this is kind of the genesis of this idea about this video, is these quilt as you go quilt bags. But this time we're doing it with cork scraps. So what I'm going to do is add my zipper pull. First, I'm going to burn my zipper tape. Sometimes I really like to do these style projects just because there's no rhyme or reason. You're just letting your mind wander and go. And I find that to be so refreshing for the creative palette, because I get so mired down in making the same thing over and over and over that sometimes I just love to just go wild. Have no real path. I just kind of quilt as you go. I really dig it. Okay, before I move on, before I forget, I want to add a tag to this. And so I'm going to be using my brass tag. I got these from Lihu Imports from Alibaba. It's Lihui. You can contact them. Really great to work with. So when you're adding tags to these style panels, sometimes the center mark is not exactly in the center. Or if you put these in the center, it'll kind of visually look a little odd because your lines aren't perfectly center. So you just kind of have to pick what you want to do. You can intentionally put it down to the side so then people know that that's how it was meant to be, or you can find the closest center point and decide if that's good enough for you, which I feel like this center point is pretty good. Either that, or I'm going to do it right there. I kind of think that could be cool too. I think I might do that. So I'm going to intentionally choose this panel here and move it over to the side, whereas normally I would center it down along this edge, but we're going to go out on a limb here. Switch it up, right? So I am going to try to center it in between these two I'm going to do that to the best of my abilities and 1/4 inch up from this bottom seam. So I'm just pressing on it, applying a lot of pressure to create an indentation in the cork. And then now I know where to make my slices. All right, there we go. Looks weird. We're going with it. Okay, so now I'm going to add my zipper, and we are just going to make like a traditional zipper sandwich here. So I'm going to put a little bit of double stick tape here along the top. You can use clips or glue, whatever you're comfortable with. And we are going to lay our zipper tape right side down. My zipper pull is on the left-hand side over here, and I cut my zipper tape to be slightly wider than the panel, so that way I had some wiggle room. If you really want to make your life easier, make it so wide that you can have your zipper pull off the panel. Which actually, let's see. So I'm going to line up this side here. And then hopefully now with that excess, I can have it hanging off this other edge. And I can move my pull down and out of the way, but I am going to toss a clip right there so that it doesn't accidentally pull off. And there we go. So now my zipper tape can lay nice and flat all the way without being impeded by the pull. Put another strip. Oh, look, my mom's calling me. Ignore. Sorry, Mom. Another strip of tape, and we are going to lay our lining down, right side down, to complete this zipper sandwich. There we go. Toss a couple clips in here just for transport. And I'm going to go to the machine. I'm going to stitch this down from the cork side. And then I'm going to flip and top stitch just the exterior down. And we're going to repeat all of this for these remaining panels here. All right, I'm going to finger press this out of the way, clip it down. And then we're going to repeat that same process on these other two panels here. I need to grab my double stick tape. Back you up because we're just going to work from this side now. So I'm going to put the double stick tape on the cork side. Just makes it so much easier to work with. Whereas if you try to stick it to the zipper tape, that would be a real challenge. All right, I'm gonna flip and add our lining here. All right, so repeat that process to get these bad boys stitched together. Okay, we've got all of our panels attached by the zipper. This is looking pretty darn cool. We'll go back over to the sewing side and create our box bottom. All right, so this is what we're looking at now. We have our zipper attached in the center. We have both of our linings. The reason I do not top stitch this down is because I find, especially when I'm sewing on textiles like this, that, sorry, Druzy was just chewing on paper over there. Druzy, stop. She's being a trash panda. But whenever I stitch, a lot of times my stitch lines on the lining just look like trash. So I just avoid that and only stitch down my exterior. I've been doing it for years on every bag that I make, and I have not had any issues with it. Druzy, honey. Get a cat, they said. So now what we need to do is decide on how wide we want our bottom. I was initially thinking that I wanted it to be 2 inches wide, but now that I moved my tag up here, I think I might make it a little bit wider just because it is so tall. So first things first, unzip your zipper. And what I'm going to do first is match these seams as best as possible, so that way everything is sitting nice. And there are so many seams on this bag to match that it just might not work out perfectly. Especially not when I'm making it. I'm always kind of all over the place. Things always slip and slide around on me. Toss a couple clips in this area here. So when you're thinking about how wide you want the base of your bag to be, obviously you need to think about like logistically, how wide do you want it to be? But because I did a 3-inch base here, I did lose a 1/4 inch when I folded it down and top stitched it. So right now, effectively, I'm working with 2.75 inches. I also know that my next seam is going to be a 1/4 inch. So I have 2.5 inches to work with on each panel, which is 5 inches in total. I do want a strip to show along the bottom here, if not a little more. So I would say I might cut my box bottoms to be 1.5 inches, and then that will give me a 3-inch bottom, and that will leave 1-inch band along the very bottom of the bag, which will really look even with this band that's at the top of the bag. So I think that's what I'm going to do. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing to hear that thought process. If it is, just ask me in the comments and I can try to explain it to you. But this is how you figure out how large you want your bags to be, or the base, whatever. I have been doing it for many years, so to me it's not confusing. I know it might be to some of you, so again, just let me know. And I can even do a video at some point of how to like create a pouch to your specifications size-wise. So on my patterns, I always do everything on the lining slightly smaller so that it fits nicely. So because I did 1.5 over here, I'm going to do 1.25 here on the lining. I always cut it down by 1/4 inch. So say your pouch has different dimensions than mine. Whatever you decide for your box bottom, just take off 1/4 inch when you make these cuts here. Put a clip in here, and then I can cut all the bottoms out. Get my sharp scissors. I like to wait until after all of my pieces are clipped together before cutting out the boxes, because sometimes things really shift and move around whenever you're sewing everything together. So I always like to keep this step until I'm right here about to do it. Okay, now we're ready to go back to the machine. And because we didn't add a pocket into this panel here, we need to leave this bottom section open for turning, or if you want to, you can leave the side section open. It's totally up to you wherever you want your birthing hole to be, but leave a decent enough area to where you can turn it comfortably and you're not breaking your arms. Because I have so much room here on my side section, I'm actually going to leave my turning hole over here on the side. So I'm going to start sewing right here, and then I'm maintaining a 1/4 inch seam allowance. I like to add lots of stay stitches over my zipper area. then you pinch your box bottoms together. So you're going to slide them until your new side meets up with your needle, and then continue sewing. I just know at some point I'm going to run out of bobbin thread. Instead of pulling that corner up, because all of this shifting was happening while I was sewing, I'm actually going to finish this edge here by flipping the panel over. I'm going to push all of this excess to get as much of it out as I can and do my stitch line from here down. And then I'll connect these edges just like this. Okay, so now what we want to do is actually physically box our bottom. So go in through your turning hole, and then you can push these out. This one I kind of accidentally sewed together, pulled them a little too close. So separate those two. This is more what it's supposed to look like. So it's pulling them together like that makes it so easy just to push your box bottoms out, because it keeps these two seams perfectly together. I'm going to sew 1/4 inch seam allowance right here. Repeat on this side. So you can see how it really shifted, but it's okay. I'm not super worried about that because A, it's in the bottom of the bag, but it's on the inside of the bag. So I'm not super concerned with that. As long as I catch all the edges, it should be fine. Now, if I had cut the box bottoms on the linings the same as the box bottom on the exterior, then it would be an issue. You really need the sizing to work out, but because we have a whole 1/4 inch to work with, I'm not really pressed about it. So I'm gonna reach up and through here and push these bottom edges out. And I always like to take both seams and just put them in opposite directions. Just makes it easier to sew. And then you don't have all 4 pieces going in one direction. And if you pull on it all the way, even going several inches up here, stretching it out flat, you should find that you can feel those 2 seams nesting nicely together. And then that way you can keep this edge nice and straight. All right, last one here. And then whatever way I lay these seams over here, I mirror that on this side. So that way this bottom seam will eventually come to rest once the bag is in use. All right, let's go flip it right side out. First things first, we need to trim down some of our seams. I always like to trim down these box bottom edges. Be careful that you're not cutting too close. I cut it down to where it's about 1/8, just maybe a little more than 1/8 left over. And then I do like to trim down these thick seams here because you'll feel them on the inside of the bag. but I'm more so focused on trimming down my zipper area and my lining. Okay. Now we can reach in and pull her out. Push your corners out. I like to kind of pull on them and finger press them so that they lay nice and flat. Push out your corners. And then I always do a test fit of my lining before I sew up my birthing hole, just because if there are any big issues, I want to fix it now before I close up that hole there. I think it fits pretty good. It's a little like loosey-goosey there because it's not interfaced. Generally, whenever I look down inside the bags that I make, they're like nice and crisp, but because I didn't interface, that's totally what I expected to see. We can do a dry run here of zipping it, and then you can really kind of pull on it and manipulate it. Okay, so once you're happy with everything, pull your lining back out. We're going to close up our birthing hole here. I'm gonna pop a little tag in because why not? Let's see. Look at this guy. This one matches the most. All right, so first I'm gonna get my edge folded in nicely, and then I will lay my tag in there. A lot of times I like to add just a little piece of tape on the inside of these woven labels because often when I'm sewing them, they'll shift and move and then they get cattywampus. Just put one piece of tape in here. And then that way I'm certain it won't shift around whenever I'm sewing it. There we go. Slide that bad boy into the seam. Okay, I'm just gonna pop to the machine and stitch this closed. I'll be right back. That's what she looks like in there. So funny when this happens, but air gets trapped in between the two bags. So you have to push all that air out before you can get it to lay nicely. Okay, this is something I didn't consider. Putting this tag so far over on the side, it kind of impedes. This bag wants to fold right here where the end of this bottom comes out, this depth. So that's kind of silly, but whatever. It's for me. In retrospect, I should have just put it in the center like I originally planned, but hey, ain't nothing wrong with the funky little bag. Kind of makes sense because this whole bag is funky, but I kind of love it in all of its weirdness. It could fit a lot of things, especially like taller things that normally you'd have to lay down in bags. I don't know. I kind of dig. What do you think? We're here. We're to the end. I hope that you enjoyed this fun Choose Your Own Adventure video. This is a Choose Your Own Adventure in every sense of the word. I feel like I was figuring out as I was going, and it was really fun to just be able to let loose with the creative juices and just flow along with it. So I hope that you guys enjoyed the video and found it useful, and I hope that you can take this information and apply it toward future projects as well. Another thing I was thinking about after I completed this bag is if you make your bottom big enough, then you can do the origami fold like we did in the snap bag video. So I think that that would be really fun. Also, I wanted to show you this bag on top of all of my toiletries that I already have in there. It fits the pencil pouch from last year's 12 Days of Christmas. So if you're new around here, this is my second annual Christmas jamboree. So go to the playlist on my YouTube channel and click 12 Days of Christmas, and you'll see all 12 videos from last year as well. This was one of the most popular ones, this little pencil pouch. I've been using this every day since last year's, and I keep all my makeup in it. And this is just the perfect little pouch. This is great for like kids and pencils and things like that. But the whole reason I pulled it out is to show you that it fits perfectly in our Scrappy pouches. So I will see y'all tomorrow for the very last day of 12 Days of Christmas for 2023. And I can't wait. All right, see y'all tomorrow.